Andrea Cross could not be here today, so I said I would speak on her behalf. So what you have on your first slide here is an indication of the 4 groups that have come together to put the 2017 Village of Berryfield Dry Stone Festival. So the Dry Stone Canada and Frontenac Heritage Foundation are their major players, and the Berryfield Village Association and the St. Mark's Church are all very much in favor of the festival. So I'm going to give you a bit of background on this. Let's see, 5 minutes. So this, I just want to mention in terms of the Frontenac Heritage Foundation that this is one of 2 events that the foundation is doing this year to celebrate our 45th anniversary. So we're 45 years old, and it's a nice year to do it because everybody's celebrating the sesquicentennial. So I'm going to give you a bit of background on what Dry Stone Canada has been doing. The Dry Stone Canada people have organized their first festival in Alton, which is near Orangeville, in 2013, 2014. And they have developed, I think, over the years, quite a strong track record in terms of their, running festivals primarily based on volunteer efforts. You may have heard that in 2015, the Amherst Island had a festival. It was very successful. And on Amherst Island is the largest concentration of dry stone walls in North America that we know of. And I should clarify, too, for you who are not familiar, that a dry stone wall is literally without mortar. So these are expert professional wallers that are coming from across UK, the US, and Canada. And the way it normally runs is we have a number of experts in the field. We have a number of volunteers who are learning the process, 20 or so, and we also then are having paid people who are wanting to take the workshop over the Saturday and Sunday and learn how to do dry stone walling. In addition, the Dry Stone Canada like to run a free children's workshop. So on Amherst Island, what happened is they brought in a huge quantity of russet potatoes, and the pictures of the dry stone wall made out of the russet potatoes are adorable. If you want to go on the Dry Stone Canada website, you'll find more information there. But here in Berryfield, what they're going to use is wood. So very interesting. I should also mention, too, that if you want to go on YouTube, you can check out, Rick Mercer did a YouTube video. He visited Amherst Island, and it's a fascinating promotion of dry stone walling. So the next slide shows you some photos of the project in Perth, just north of here, which took place last year. There, it was a very large project. It was an entire bridge that was built. So there was a lot of prep work that had to be done in the days ahead, and there's cleanup afterwards. So we being Dry Stone Canada and the Frontenac Heritage Foundation, take full responsibility for the lead-up preparatory work and also the cleanup afterwards. But at the Perth, Ontario, this was the largest turnout so far. They had 2,500 people visiting over the 2 days. And so it certainly is starting to develop a reputation. They try to have festivals in September or October, and as you can see here, we've been successful in getting 2 grants, one from the Community Foundation for Kingston and area, and also one from the Pittsburgh Community Benefit Fund. In terms of the next one, so the proposal before you today, which I won't really describe, but I wanted to give you the context for the festival. The proposal is to rebuild the walls at St. Mark's. The walls, I won't go into the whole detail, but the walls have been moved at least once back because the city widened the municipal right-of-way. And even though they look solid, they are not structurally sound. And the wallers, when they came to visit, were a bit concerned about the condition that they're in. So they are in need of fixing. So the next slide is really how is a 2-day festival organized. I'm not going to go through this, but there's a great deal of work that has to be done, and most of it is being done by volunteer labor. And if you've ever been involved in organizing volunteers, it's a little bit like herding cats. So What others are contributing so far, we are doing support, and we're also involved in billeting. The people who come to volunteer, the professional wallers, they are being paid to come here, but everyone is volunteering their time and effort here to make this work. Drystone Canada is doing the project management. BVA is also helping with the billeting and the hosting of people that come. And St. Mark's Church has donated the use of their hall, and they've been also very supportive in terms of putting on meals for the group of people who will be there. There are a great number of benefits we feel to the festival. I won't go through all of these, but this aspect of going back to sort of historical ways of doing construction has a lot of appeal to people. And I think what the great thing about the children's workshop is you're bringing on a new generation and teaching them. And it's been very interesting across Canada how popular these have been. And last but not least, I hear the timer going off. I just want to say if anybody wants more information, please go to the Drystone Canada website and/or the Heritage Kingston website. Thank you.
Thank you. What a fascinating looking event. Does anyone have any questions for the delegation? Catherine.
When is it?
Oh, I beg your pardon. The last day of September and the first day of October. So the prep will be the week before. And so please mark it on your calendar. If you know of anyone who might be interested in it, please pass the word. That would be great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I think I might know a few people. Is there any other questions? Yes, Don? Hang on, you might have to answer one more.
Yeah. Local stones are very variable across the province and country and so on. Are there any issues about dealing with different stones in different places?
Well, in fact, the plan is, because as you know, if you use new stone in this old wall, it will probably stick out like a sore thumb, but there will be places perhaps where we can incorporate some new stone. But in behind these walls, there's quite a supply of stones that have been sitting there. So these are aged stones for sure, and the intent is to make sure that those are used on sort of the frontage, right?
It's kind of another use for the old stones of Kingston, I guess. Peter?
This is fascinating, and I wonder if, as a result of the dry stone, the interest in dry stones, if there is any possibility that there might be new walls created as opposed to dry stone walls, as opposed to protecting those remnants of which survive.
Interestingly, on Amherst Island, if you ever have a chance to go over and look at the installation there are new stone walls that have been built there, and it's a really interesting installation. And in addition to that, many of the existing stone walls on Amherst Island have been rebuilt, and Berryfield, of course, was the first that came to my mind in terms of lots of stone walls up there. That some of them are not in very good shape. But yes, we're really trying to reach out to the people in like the Pittsburgh Historic Society, where, again, you've got a lot of remnant stone walls across former Pittsburgh that could be rebuilt. So, yes, and that, I think, is what we're seeing. If you go to Drystone Canada, you'll see there are probably half a dozen workshops that are being held across Canada. And so there is a lot of interest in rebuilding and building new walls. Yeah.
Thank you. So we will be discussing 268 Main Street, St. Mark's Church file when it comes to business about the actual application. So we might have another chance to comment at that point. Thank you very much. We now have a briefing from Mr. Wington, Cultural Director, and he is going to speak to us regarding illumination of city facilities and amenities policy. And this, just to remind the committee, this is an item where where Council gave approval last night for another aspect of this file. There's more than one step along the way, and maybe Mr. Wigginton will probably touch on this. Go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for that introduction. I'm here today as we move into the next phase of this work around the illumination of City Hall and area features in the First Capital section of Kingston. So up until now, you've had the opportunity through this committee to talk to the technical aspects of this project. So there was a briefing by facilities management in December and February, the heritage permit application that came forward in March, and the project budget that was approved by council also in March, and then the approval of the heritage permit. So what we're focusing on this morning actually is the orange area, which is the shift now into policy. So, you know, we have the equipment in place and the system is being set up. So how do we actually use it and move forward from here? So we've embarked on a public consultation process of which this is part, and I've had an initial meeting with the Cultural Heritage Working Group from Heritage Kingston to start having some discussions about the policy and how this new addition to the landscape will be used, and obviously picking that up today with a briefing in front of you. But we're also moving towards a public meeting on June 12th, so that's this coming Monday, and that's going to take place in Memorial Hall. And through this whole period, facilities management, who's spoken to you before, will be going through the process of installation and commissioning of the equipment, and I believe that information has been shared with you previously. And as Councillor Stroud made reference to, because the policy hasn't been approved at this point, we did get council approval last night that we can inaugurate the new system over the Canada Day weekend. And so there'll actually be an event on the evening of June 30th where the mayor will ceremoniously flick the switch, as it were, and activate the new system so it can be used over that weekend. Subsequent to that inauguration of the system, we will then be bringing the policy to the Administrative Policies Committee on July 5th, who will have a chance to review it and then hopefully have it move on to Council on July 11th. And I wanted to flag for you right now that the way the policy is being built, we have already put in a one-year policy review so that we can again engage in a project or a process of consultation to determine the success of the first year of the use of this system. And so you've seen this before in one of the technical briefings, just to show, particularly on the facade of City Hall, where the lighting is being installed. But really today is to talk quickly about the policy. So the reason I'm here is because this falls under the commemoration policy and the original strategy, which was led by Cultural Services. And within that, it was anticipated that we would need to have a policy created around the external illumination of City Hall and Springer Market Square. And without getting into too much detail, it's really been positioned within the commemoration policy as something equivalent to proclamations or flag raisings, that it includes an element where the public can come forward and request opportunities to have this area illuminated. So in developing the policy, we've done some research into other sample municipal policies. So I'm just going to highlight a few here to give you a sense of what some of them say. City of Toronto, and this is the new City Hall versus the old City Hall. They do have two sections to the building. There's the dome at the center, which is reserved in terms of lighting, in terms of highlighting the architectural significance of the building, but the two towers are available for public requests to have those illuminated in recognition of different issues, milestones, events. The approvals are done by staff, and there's no appeal process. There's a maximum of 2 colors that can be requested at any one time, and the towers are illuminated from dusk till dawn on one evening. There are disqualifying conditions in place, and having had a request approved doesn't mean it's automatically approved moving into the future. And looking at the website, it seems that there's an unlimited number of requests that are being made. And that's something that's been interesting to look at across policies, because every municipality seems to take a different approach. Some, like the City of Toronto, seem to virtually have it lit up every day. Others not so much. So here's just a quick image that shows the 2 towers, in this instance illuminated blue, and the center dome illuminated a sort of green-white, it looks like. Another example on a very different scale is Port Coquitlam, and they have emphasized in their policy soft white light to trace the architectural lines of the building, but that it can be programmed for different occasions. In 2016, it looked like there was 11 dates that were pre-approved by their council. There's a choice of 7 colors, so they've limited the color palette, and they do allow for multi-day or they don't allow for multi-day or multi-year requests, so that aligns with the City of Toronto, and they reserve the right to deny requests, and priority is given to city-hosted events. And that's a shot of their City Hall illuminated in green and blue. San Francisco is a very interesting example. This is one that's just come online in recent years, and it was done to coincide with the 100th anniversary of the City Hall itself. And in this case, all decisions are made by internal staff, so including the city administrator, the chief of protocol, and the director of special events. Sorry for the typo. And they do, and it's interesting, in this case, they do allow a certain number of opportunities to light up City Hall by private or corporate interest for $5,000 as a revenue stream. And there are fantastic images of the San Francisco City Hall illuminated in different ways. This is for the election day, obviously Pride in San Francisco, International Women's Day, an illumination during the daytime. And the last of the examples I'm going to look at is Belfast, which indicates that it's mainly lit up in white light to feature the architecture of the building. They do have a limited number of days that they allow it to be illuminated, so 29 in 2017, and they also do it for city-led events, but they only accept requests in exceptional circumstances. And I've got some images of the Belfast City Hall that I want to show you, but before we do, I just wanted to throw in this slide because I think we have to be mindful when we're introducing a program like this that we all have a certain perception of architecture and how architecture needs to be dealt with and presented. And I think the historical record shows that in Greek culture, the classical architecture from which so much of our own architectural tradition is derived was polychromed, and that was the technology of the day that the Greeks could use to highlight the architectural features of their buildings, so they actually applied paint to bring out the details of the buildings. And so I think that that's something we have to be mindful of in this notion of introducing color in this context to City Hall in this area, because color, white being a color, and staff have had a lot of debates about that, and you'll see shortly why that is a powerful tool for celebration, but also for highlighting architecture. And I think it's actually somewhat erroneous to suggest that only white light is appropriate as a way to highlight the building. So here's a shot of Belfast City Hall with a sort of blue-white illumination combined with red. And if I can get this to work, there's a very interesting YouTube video of Belfast City Hall. And I'll just skip to some highlights. So what I find really interesting is if you look at this video, they actually have 4 whites that they use throughout the year. They have a winter white, they have a spring white, a summer white, and a fall white. And in between, then there's the opportunity at different times of year to highlight with different colors to acknowledge events of importance to the city of Belfast. So I won't go through this whole video, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that, you know, the building is lit a white. That white is interrupted at different times by different colors for different observations. It reverts back to the seasonal white, and it goes on a cycle like that throughout the year. So the spring white, a little bit more of a yellow white than a blue white. And so forth. And certainly we'll share this link with you if it's something of interest that you would like to take a closer look at. Just a few images to highlight Capitol Hill here in Canada. It also has a very active lighting program. Here's a sample of what it looks like on Canada Day during the winter time with snowflakes. and color, and so that brings us to Kingston City Hall. And this is a mock-up created by the firm that's been contracted to do the lighting to show what the building could possibly look like with a combination of color and projection, in this case, maple leaves. So just getting into the illumination policy itself quickly, the purpose of the policy is to establish guidelines for considering requests to illuminate City Hall and areas around the building for the purposes of celebrating, commemorating, promoting, or creating awareness of local history, special events, or issues important to the community. The goal of this policy is to establish an administrative process to coordinate requests. So I need to highlight the fact that this is actually an internal corporate policy, but we understand that the illumination of this area is one of particular interest to the public, and so that's the reason for the public consultation and for getting council's approval of the policy. And I've highlighted on the list here that there's actually, it depends how you slice it, but we're really looking at 3 different zones of illumination. So the most significant one is the illumination of the front and rear facades of City Hall, and by that I mean the Ontario Street facade, but also this Market Street facade. At this time, and I'm sure facilities management talked about this, there will not be any lighting on the Brock Street side of City Hall at time being due to financial constraints. The dome of City Hall is also being dealt with as sort of a discrete unit, but often in conjunction with Springer Market Square. And Springer Market Square is the lighting that's going to be installed along what would normally be the rink side of Market Square, or the market side of Market Square, that can be used throughout the year. But also being kept separate are the Confederation Park Fountain and the McNevin Memorial Fountain. At this time, the lighting's being installed in the Confederation Fountain. The McNevin Fountain, that lighting is going to be added at a later date, but because they're seasonal, that lighting program is going to be managed by staff as opposed to by council request or public request. So we've made a number of assumptions in developing this policy, so I just wanted to go through them quickly. That we already know that this area is lit at night for the purposes of safety and also to highlight the architectural features of the building. So it's meant to continue that opportunity, and also in this case to be able to add the chance to promote important community event celebrations issues. We are assuming that it's going to be done in a respectful way in relation to Kingston City Hall and in a way that does not negatively impact area residents. It's assumed that a limited number of colors will be used at any one time, and careful consideration will be given to the animation of these colors and the use of projections. And I know that facilities management has shared this technical information with you. We do have the ability to program 1.8 million colors, so we need to manage that effectively. And the use of projections is something that's going to be done only exclusively in relation to council-approved illuminations. It is not going to be used to respond to world events or for commercial purposes. And I just want to unpack this a little bit, because one of the immediate questions we get is when there's an event like there has been recently in London or Manchester, even today in Iran, that we'd be somehow expected to light up City Hall in the colors of those nations in recognition. We are taking the position not to allow that because it is politically loaded to, put the highlight on Western developed countries in place of Middle Eastern or developing countries, and we just don't want to get into those decisions about who is worthy of recognition and being honored over who is not. And obviously commercial purposes is self-explanatory, though we have had conversations and we're not quite sure what's going to happen when the Fronts are in the playoffs again. So that's a point that we'll have to get to. As I've already mentioned, the fountains will fall outside the policy given their seasonal nature, and I've also highlighted that the illumination policy will be reviewed after 1 year. So in terms of the public consultation process, I've already highlighted this, but just to reinforce that there was the meeting with the Cultural Heritage Working Group that provided input. A press release went out on Monday, and an online survey, and this is the thing I want to focus on now, has been made available through the city website. It went live on Monday and will continue to be available through the 16th of June to gather input from the public. obviously this briefing this morning with you and the public meeting that's coming up on Monday. And the main focus of this public consultation are really the two questions listed here. How often does the city want, or the community want, to see this lighting system used for purposes other than the obvious, and when? And as we started to get into looking at this and looking at resources like the federally issued national days of observances and celebrations, there are potentially dozens, if not hundreds of times that a system like this could be used. So we're trying to get a read from the community about appropriateness. So the first question on the survey is really about frequency, just to get a sense of people's appetite. So we didn't create an opportunity to say never because the system is in place, so it's a given, but there is the option of rarely, occasionally, often, or as much as possible. And then we get into sort of the for what purpose. And so in this case, the questions delve into nationally recognized holidays and days of observance. And our baseline, and you'll see this when you actually do the survey, for no other reason than looking at other examples, that the baseline would essentially be Canada Day, Remembrance Day, and New Year's Eve. Those, to us as staff, seemed like the most obvious council-approved dates that one would want to see move forward, and that we would light up City Hall on those occasions. The second area gets into, though, where we start to have more subjective points of view. And we would want to hear from the community about, well, what about things like Sir John A. Day on January 11th, or National Aboriginal Day on June 21st, or Pride that falls in mid-June, National Multiculturalism Day on June 27th, St. John Baptiste Day in July. Like, what are those dates that the community most critically thinks are important for Kingston to recognize? And in this case, this is a list that we hope will get enough input on to be able to bring forward as part of the policy from day one, that council will approve a select number of days at which City Hall will be illuminated. Moving on from there, we're also assuming, as many of the other policies do, that if the city initiates large-scale events, that there's an opportunity to use the system to light up Springer Market Square, and that would be for things like Rock in the Square or Snow Much Fun, which is something that the city does. But we also recognize that we work with a lot of municipal partners who may be interested in using the illumination system as well. So, for example, Downtown Kingston BIA with Buskers Fest, Blues Fest, Feb Fest, that they may wish to make use of this. Tourism Kingston for different initiatives like Tourism Awareness Week. Our local post-secondary institutions may want to. CFB Kingston, I'm sure, has opportunities that they would like to see the building illuminated. So we want to get a sense of what those kind of community agencies would be interested in seeing this, seeing how the system gets used. And the third-party requests is probably the most open-ended, and this is where we see a lot of variation in different municipalities, and this is why, for example, Toronto City Hall is illuminated almost every day of the year, is requests from the public, and particularly not-for-profit or charitable organizations who wish to bring attention to issues of concern. So there's a few examples here, like World Ovarian Cancer Day, and that's there because that request has actually come forward already, and things like National Volunteer Week or Respect the Pink, which has been very visible in our community in recent years. So the way that the survey is constructed is it asks for an opinion on those different categories. It gives some suggestions, but also creates space for people to add more input. And of course, no survey would be complete without other comments section. So there's all kinds of room within the survey for people to add additional comments. So I'm going to conclude there, but I certainly welcome any questions or discussions at this point. But in terms of your own input, I would encourage you to participate in the survey that's online and potentially come to the meeting on June 12th as well. So thank you very much.
So at the briefing stage, it's questions only. If you have comments, there is an information report later in the agenda. I just want to ask a quick question about that section. When we come to the information report, is that an appropriate time for sort of preliminary impressions of committee members in addition to the survey and the next public meeting?
I would say that it's really more for some discussion and exploration of some themes, but I would encourage that if for actual documented purposes, for people to use the survey to express their opinions.
Okay, so just to clarify, so the clerk won't be collecting opinions and input during the information report phase of today's meeting. Is that correct?
Well, as I was outlining, and hopefully it was somewhat clear, is that we can talk about things like my proposal about architecture and color are not mutually exclusive, that we can talk about those kinds of things, or even the issue of perhaps the world events, those sort of bigger ideas, but specific input around what days we want to see recognized. I would encourage the survey as the context for that.
So the way I interpret that is cultural heritage related questions will be appropriate when that item comes up. Personal opinions about the days and the other aspects of the policy should be given, that input should be given through the other avenues.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. So questions only about the presentation. This is just questions about the presentation. If you start making commentary, I'll cut you off. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. On Canada Day, when folks come downtown to see City Hall, they'll know what it is that is being commemorated. But some of the other occasions, they may not know what it is. And I wonder if there is... or what thought has been given to how, if someone comes down on a particular day and finds City Hall illuminated, how are they going to know what it is that that illumination is in honor of?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. There's been many departments involved in the development of this policy, including cultural services and facilities management, but the clerk's office is also going to be the body through which requests will come through, and we've also been working with communications. So at a baseline, as you'll see in other municipal websites, those moments are actually documented on the city website and pushed out as information as to what the colors are actually meant to signify. And the same is true already in practice with proclamations. The city does publish information about various proclamations, so the website will be the main platform for that information.
Any other questions about the briefing? Yes, Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The pictures of Belfast were gorgeous. In the discussion, we've got different areas that are going to be illuminated. How have you sort of split areas up in the sense you can't, I couldn't imagine you could illuminate nightly because so many people live around the back part.
Right.
The front part seems like the location for a lot of the major lighting. Is that sort of how you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of sort of work that will have to get ironed out over the course of the first year, but my understanding is the assumption is on a day like Canada Day or Remembrance Day, the city will illuminate the dome, the facade, and the Market Street facade as one piece, and that it will be given that kind of prominence. And at other times when, say, it is Respect the Pink Day, potentially the facade of City Hall would be illuminated in a white, but the dome itself and Market Square, for example, would in that case be pink. So you would have a combination of the architectural highlighting of the facade with the dome and Market Square given the pink hue. So we're going to have to play with that to see how it actually works. It's great to look at all these examples from other parts of the world, but we have to get a solution that works here in Kingston.
Yes, but it did look very beautiful.
Yes, agreed.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the briefing? You know, the introduction to the briefing. I think I've illustrated what the procedural piece will be when we get to the information report, which is actually coming in a couple minutes. Right? There's one item to get to first, and then we'll get to it. So I guess we'll move on then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And please stick around because we have a discussion in a minute. There is another item on the agenda first. It's the Civic Museum's 2016 year-end report. It's an information report. We're now into business, 8A. So the first item, if staff would like to just introduce the information report, and then the questions would be allowed. Yes.
Thank you. So this report was put together as part of the reporting structure for the city museums, including the McLaughlin Woodworking Museum, the Pump House Steam Museum, as well as City Hall as a National Historic Site. It also has some reporting information regarding our civic collections. You often see those pieces coming to this group when we have suggestions for accessions. This is a new format for our reporting for the museums. Previous different committee organizations had requested and had different reporting structures. So we've brought this today to highlight some of the things we were working on in 2016 so that this can then go to council as our official report.
Thank you. So, as with all business items, questions are permitted of staff by members of the committee, and then we go to members of the public. There's no recommendation here, so that we wouldn't have a debate after that. Yes, Jamie.
I'm just curious in terms of attendance. I mean, I know this does get done. It's not a totally loaded question, but in terms of the percentage between, community residents accessing the sites versus, say, like people who are the focus of tourism, right? So there's that difference between commercial versus community civic engagement. Just curious.
Thank you. We are tracking 417 postal code data with essentially in 16 we didn't get enough postal code data to really be able to reflect on where our numbers are coming from, but we have highlighted and made it a sort of a target for the museums teams this summer to track our postal code data, which will allow us using Environics to actually assess where we're getting different visitors from, and we can actually tag those into the programming we're offering and what they're coming to see. So the point is well taken, and absolutely that's something we're aspiring to be able to report more clearly in the next iteration of this for 17. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the committee? I see Dawn.
Excuse me, I had a quick look through the addendum message from Mr. Weavers, which relates to the Pump House Steam Museum, and I don't think we want to go through it in detail, but he raises some issues, and the question is really, in what way can those issues and questions be considered, either here or in the working group or something like that?
Thank you. I have received and reviewed the correspondence as well, and certainly there are concerns that he raises that I think they're in future state. We're working towards gathering, as I've just indicated, things like postal code data that will allow us to have a more robust breakdown of some of the concerns that I think he has highlighted in terms of the reporting structure. As always, we refer to the community and work with the community in the development of programming, exhibitions, et cetera. So in that regard, I think that we certainly have a process by which to incorporate his concerns or his suggestions into our consideration when we're working on programming in particular. In terms of the financial reporting concerns that he indicated, this one is a little bit more difficult to kind of tease out in the ways that he's requested. The CRA suggestion as a charitable organization, other museums and their reporting structures actually are not applicable in this context. We follow under a different legislative guideline in terms of our reporting structures for that. Also, in service to efficiency, one of the things that we aspire to do within our department is certainly to streamline and work across what might be perceived to be kind of building boundaries. So what I mean by that is that it's difficult to isolate any specific activity to any specific salaried individual or any specific program line, et cetera, because in an effort to be efficient and to be able to cross-program, we don't isolate. So it's none of the museums, the Pump House included, are standalone entities, and as a result, their financial reporting is slightly more complicated. And so certainly we're taking his comments and considering them in preparation for what we will report on in 17. So that's sort of where we are right now.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Schell. Sorry, Mr. Wigginton would like to add comment to that last point. And just to remind the committee that because it's an item of correspondence, if really discussion around the correspondence should be later on in the agenda. Yes, Mr. Wright.
Right. So I just wanted to add to what Ms. Campbell was saying to that point is that staff are very aware of the concerns of Mr. Weaver's and have been for many, many years, and are very respectful of his long association with the site. And much of what he outlines in that correspondence is not new to us, and so very much informs the work that we do moving forward. So I just want this committee to understand that we have a huge understanding of those concerns. They're long-standing and ones that we continue to work to address.
Thank you. Any other questions about the information report from members of the committee? Yes, Councillor Shell.
Thank you. It was very good to read. And I'm not sure if this is a council question, not so much to you, but things like the Lumberjack Survival Summit, hugely popular. How easily can you respond to things like that that are incredibly popular, that would probably bring in lots more people? It could kind of become like the sheepdog trials or something. But I don't know how well funded you are in terms of being able to expand when there's something that really grabs people's interest.
The sheepdog trials. The Lumberjack is actually a very interesting piece, and for exactly that reason. It's actually funded largely through community engagement and education in association with special events programming at the museum. And this is where our budgets do become a bit complex in that regard, because it is, in many ways, an engagement piece that happens at the museum in the spirit of the museum's mandate. That being said, it is one of those very popular. It's an event we get a great deal of interest about. We have to limit our numbers, not only because of budgetary concerns, but also about the quality of the offering. And so this year, we're limiting our numbers, I believe, to 36 participants. But we're really carefully engaging those participants this year so that we can try to put together a projection of what would be possible if that were to grow, and where would we see that kind of tipping point where the quality of the delivery would start to be affected by the scale of the offering. So for this year, we are staying a bit small on that, but we know that it is an area where we want to look carefully at how we could grow that and what the budgetary implication might be.
Thanks. So what I'm partly hearing is that it's possible that we could become an incubator for something very popular in the city, and then another group might take it over. So that's really exciting, because I think that's what we should be doing. And then the other point was about lighting. I presume that you're all discussing lighting in terms of some of these many activities that you have, that the City Hall might be able to be illuminated along with some of these activities.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah, we hadn't really spoken to integration of kind of the museum pieces to the City Hall lighting policy and development, but I think that is an area of intersection, and when we have the policy developed and can see in the ways that those might intersect, I think that's a very valuable area for us to explore. I just want to add as well, the idea of kind of incubating and then releasing, is very much in our mandate of sector development, and if the museums can become incubators that then release, we do have an example of that, which was the concussion program that was spoken about in this report. And we are right now working with REC on the delivery of that program, but our hope is actually to sort of release that programming into REC facilities more so than being held in cultural services. So I think that's a really interesting model for us to sort of generate interest and then perhaps, distribute as necessary.
Any other questions? We now go to members of the public if they have questions or comments about this report. Please come to the mic, turn it on, state your name.
So Frank Dixon, thank you for the report and the presentation today. Two items I wanted to raise are maybe a little bit outside the box, but I think they're of interest. Looking at the dome of this building, I think it's normally closed for public access, but I'm wondering about maybe opening that up and turning it into maybe a small art gallery up there. There's quite a lot of space. I've never been up there, but just looking at it from the outside, you've got a lot of items that you're not displaying. and my other one might even be more off the wall, but looking at the Woodworking Museum, I don't know if anybody watches a lot of sports on TV, but that's something I do. And they have something called International Timber Sports now, where you have people who are lumberjacks actually getting together and competing in various events with sawing or chopping wood and this sort of thing. So they use very scenic locations as the backdrop. The latest one I saw was from the Tyrol in Austria, looking down over the valley. So given that that's on the St. Lawrence, it's a very beautiful spot, and fitting in with the idea of sports tourism. They do draw people to cover this, and it gets TV coverage. So again, just a suggestion of using that site as sort of an international timber sports event. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Seeing none, staff has the opportunity to respond if they want to the comments and questions. Yes, Mr. Wigington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, in response to the first question, which is one that we've been giving a lot of thought to and have done over the years, we've actually been given a mandate to come back with a proposal for the further expansion of exhibition space in City Hall, and you will be seeing, as we speak, the reimagining of what were two former meeting rooms downstairs into exhibition spaces. So the John Counter and McDonald meeting rooms are currently being converted. And so that is a sort of pilot to see what's potential, but we will be coming back with a fuller proposal in time. But I also want to speak to the dome in particular because that is an area of particular interest, and I think it's quite a remarkable feature of the building and one that we do very much want to highlight in some form. The challenge for us in more recent years has had to do both with the functioning of the building but also accessibility. So that area of the building is devoted to our legal services department, and so it's not one that the public can generally access unless they're on a tour, but there's also issues around accessibility legislation that it's not an accessible space, unfortunately, for all people, and so we also, in presenting that as a potential exhibition site, also have to look at what's required in terms of alternative experiences to be able to give everyone the ability to have a sense of what's available up there. So that's a great point and one that we've been exploring in depth for quite some time.
Thank you. So that's the Civic Museum's 2016 year-end report. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, which was the subject of the briefing. And just to remind everyone the procedural point here, I discussed this with staff and with the clerk yesterday. Basically, and with Professor Campbell, the policy has been introduced to us by briefing, and the consultation is ongoing. There are multiple avenues of consultation with the public that are happening. There's a public meeting, there's the survey, there's things like that. But this is the opportunity for us to discuss the heritage aspects. Even though it's an information report, there's no recommendation. Nothing that we say will go to council for approval. However, our expert opinion is valued by the members of the cultural department. So this is our opportunity to discuss things, have a little discussion, like a group discussion over the points that are in the report. This is a policy development, right? So the policy is not done yet, and this is sort of an opportunity to help shape the policy, and so the comments will be heard. And just a reminder, obviously this work is being done by the Cultural Services Department, but our input is valued. So with that being said, does anyone wish to speak to the item? I'll kick things off. A thought that I had, and this is through my lens. I am red-green colorblind, and some aspects of art are lost on me. This is a source of amusement to my daughters. I don't get it sometimes because I don't see the nuances in the colors. I'm essentially visually impaired in that sense when it comes only to color, not to, well, I wear glasses now, but my eyesight is fine. I'm not blind, but I am colorblind, which means I'm oblivious to certain aspects of color. And this would be the same case for all red-green colorblind people, which I understand is at least 10% of the male population. So I don't know if that's an accessibility issue, but maybe to consider that in developing the policy, that color choice, because that's the most common form of color blindness, and then there's 1.8 million colors. For example, colors like yellow, no problem at all. Those hues I see very well, and it actually skews the experience for me. So at Lumina Borealis, it didn't seem to be an issue. I went to that. They may or may not be aware of that in their programming, but I'm sure there's a way to accommodate colorblindness in the program so that it's not, so that if there's anything contrasting, it needs to be essentially tested on a colorblind person to make sure that it actually works on them. That's my point about that. It's just a small one, but that's the kind of thing, brainstorming kind of thing that I had in mind, if anyone else has any ideas. Yes, Councillor Schell.
Just in terms of comments, I was at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities on the weekend, and I listened to tourists say, "Did you see the lights down at Parliament Hill?" People love it, and I'm very excited at the idea. I recognize that the big difference for us is the back part. There are a lot of people who live around here, and I'm sure that could become an issue, but it's something that animates probably our most important building. And the reason I love Belfast was the question about illuminating the architecture of this building being so important, and many of those slides seem to be able to incorporate both. You could celebrate International Women's Day with appropriate colors and also keep the building looking absolutely gorgeous. And I would be quite happy if the building were illuminated every night at the facade, because it creates just an incredible vision on the waterfront for people. The Wolf Island Ferry works all winter. So I'm certainly one that would be quite happy to have certainly the facade always illuminated, similar to Belfast, and I'll certainly be filling out the survey. Thank you.
Catherine.
Am I correct in that the idea is to have it illuminated through all overnight?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is one of the issues that we're looking at. The policy from the City of Toronto that I showed does make specific reference from dusk till dawn, and I think that that's one of the issues we're going to have to really look at and test, to the point that Councillor Schell has raised. You know, what is appropriate in terms of illuminating the building to highlight it, illuminating it for celebration or awareness, but also being respectful of light pollution and area residents. So we have had some discussions about it shifting to sort of an overnight mode after midnight. So those are some of the technical details that we'll have to figure out.
Yes.
The reason why I'm asking that is, or one of them, is because even on this side of the building, we have the condos. And I've been in those condos, and they would be very much affected by light pollution. So I'm not sure how much light splay there is, but it isn't just this kind of side of the building, but it's also the hotel and so on that would be affected.
Agreed, and through you, Mr. Chair, you know, I think that we also have to be mindful that the building has always been illuminated, and I'm not aware of complaints up until now with the existing system, so that is something that we'll have to actively monitor. And I believe that facilities management also made the point that because this system is fully computer controlled, the intensity of the lighting is also something that can be managed very effectively.
Yeah, that last point is important. In comparison to the current practice, if the intensity is not higher, and my understanding is that white light is the brightest of all the colors. So if the intensity is not brighter with the colored lighting, it shouldn't add to the light pollution that already exists. But I actually had a question about light pollution as well. I'm assuming that this is, seeing as it's new technology, that this has been considered by the design in the design, but there must be because the lights can be focused on the building. There must and it can be quantified how much is reflecting back off the light-colored stones and stuff. So that kind of calculation can be made. But is that part of the policy, the light pollution aspect?
In response to your question, Mr. Chair, no, not at this time. It's really an administrative policy, how we're going to deal with the actual program itself, and I think those issues are ones that will have to be addressed through this first year of experimentation, but I would have to defer to my colleagues in facilities management about those kind of more technical questions.
Any other heritage-related concerns that anyone can think of, or suggestions or comments? Okay, well, I'll go to members of the public on the subject. You're welcome in the discussion as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So thank you for the briefing and the report. Listening to the fascinating possibilities which are available and looking what other cities do, question I had was, it all comes down to cost, right? Once your system is in place, what is the cost for creating a display, say, for one day? Because if that is not that high, then it isn't a restraining factor on using the system more. If it's high, then that might restrain the possibilities. Thank you.
We take all comments from members of the public at once in series, and then staff has an opportunity to respond.
Helen Finley. I have a question about the range of capability of the system, and I'm wondering if it's equipped to do on-off, like flashing or flickering lighting. And I hope it isn't, because I think that would be really very distracting for people. A lot of people react badly to that, and it's also just too kitschy for words here. And the other thing, you know, the more you illuminate it, not with intensity, but frequency, the less festive it becomes. It just then fades into the ordinary. I'm not talking about the ongoing architectural white light that is on the building. But if it's done every day, then people just walk by and it's nothing for them. And so I think it should be reserved for special occasions. And I just think that I look at the proclamations that are done at council, and I think you may find that there will increase hugely from all sorts of groups. And I don't know if they're ever turned down unless they're really totally unacceptable. So I think that would be an area that you should work very narrowly on and have some good discussion, because I think the 3 days that you've picked, I think that's a wonderful foundation to use and always keep. But then there may be some debate after that on the others. I also wondered about the operator of the program, because I gather changes from depending on what you want to put up there, and what kind of training they receive on the system. It's a little like the music for the skating. I don't know who runs that. I think it's Sirius something or other. And sometimes it's very loud and sometimes it's rather quiet. It's nearly all, Well, I just wonder why they never have Strauss waltzes or a little classical music once in a while. It never happens. So I think the operator may have some choice in some of these. The series, I understand it's pre-programmed. So I think that's important, the instructions you give the person who's doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Okay, staff has an opportunity to respond to at this point.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the question of cost, Mr. Dixon is correct. It is very much front-end loaded in this case with the system that once the fixtures themselves have been set up and the computer control system with the software has been established, the cost mostly shifts to human resource in terms of the actual programming and management of the system. One of the things that we do have to look at, though, is that there are incremental costs potentially associated with, and this links to Ms. Finley's question, the system, because it is computer control, can be animated. The lights can be managed in a way that has them fade in, fade out, change colors, any myriad of arrangements as possible. And again, I would direct you to that video from Belfast as an example, because it shows how in some cases that's been used. And with the projection units, there's also some costs associated with creating what are called gobos, which are the items that are used to create images such as maple leaves. And so if there are instances, for example, if the downtown Kingston BIA wanted to perhaps do something in relation to Buskers Fest, Blues Fest, or FebFest, there would be a cost to them as the requester for any of that kind of additional sort of setup requirements. And so those are costs that we're in the middle of determining right now. So that's the cost question. A little bit about the animation question. So animation is entirely possible, and that's one of the both the great things, but also a challenge with a system as robust as this, is that many things are possible, but we also want to manage it in an effective way. So those are issues that we're going to have to look at. And I personally agree with the comment about the judicious use of the lighting, so it continues to maintain a sense of specialness. But again, this is a public facility and a public opportunity, so that's why the survey is really needed to get a measure of how much interest there is in the community. And in terms of the last question around operator or training related to the site, and the operation of the lighting equipment, it is being installed by a professional lighting company called Christie Lights, who are most known for their work in the theatrical world. But that's a big part of what's happening during the month of June with the installation and the commissioning of the system, is the specialists from Christie Lights are doing a lot of the setup and training staff as to how it can continue to be used in the future. And I've certainly been privy to discussions about how Christie Lights can be brought back in at future times to help with the refinement of the process and the ongoing training of staff. So I think that I agree with you that it's not just a case of flicking the lights on. There's a lot of sort of subjective aesthetic and sort of judgments that'll have to be made as the system is used more and more.
Thank you. One more opportunity for committee members to weigh in on the policy at this point. This kind of consultation, this is the only chance we get to do it in this committee format. So I guess that's it then. Thank you very much, and good luck with the policy formations. I'm also on administrative policies, so I'll see it again. Thank you. It's funny, the next item of business is policy development and implementation. It always seems to be empty, but obviously this one, it was one of those items. Next one is the heritage assets. So there's the placeholder items there which are empty. And then we get to D, which is statutory business, which is never empty. And you'll see now we're into the heritage permits. So the first one is an application for a heritage permit under the Heritage Act, 90 Johnson Street. And I see Ryan is ready to introduce. Oh, yeah. Yes, right. If you haven't noticed, all of these heritage permits fall under Part 5 designations. So the rules for Part 5, the rules that new this year about procedure, just to remind members of the committee, staff introduces a report. No, there's no questions. There was a period of dash input, which some of you partook in, and I'm told staff would like us to use that system as much as possible. That's why it's there. That's why the dash is there, to get our input in early in the process. If you did use dash, the next step after the introduction, it would be to ask committee members if their comments in dash were captured accurately in the report, just sort of like the minutes, that kind of thing. And then we go to the members of the public. They have a chance to make comment, as they do on all items. The applicant, as a member of the public, is allowed to make comments as well. And then we, as community members, get one chance to give final comments to the clerk to include into the minutes, and that would go to staff, and it's staff that makes the final report that goes to council. So with that said, that's the same procedure for all of these items. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first application before you today is at 90 Johnson Street. It's at the southeast corner of Johnson and Wellington Streets in the Old Sydenham District. This property contains a two-story stone building built in 1851 to plans by William Coverdale. It is also located within the Old Sydenham Heritage District, and it's designated in 1984 individually under Part 4. So this is the original stone building from 1851. This is the Wellington Street facade, which is the subject of the application before you today. Particularly, the applicants have made an application under Section 42 for approval to modify the existing storefront. This portion of the building up here is a 1980s stucco addition onto the original stone building. And it was originally a bookstore, or it was most previously a bookstore. Currently, the applicants wish to renovate it as a use of office space, as well as a receiving entrance for deliveries for the new use of the property. The current recessed entranceway is to be brought forward to be in line with the current facade of the building. The new fixed windows and rectangular transoms are proposed to flank the new double doors. The new windows are to be vertical rectangular windows, similar in shape of the existing windows in the building, and will be designed to be in line with the sills of the adjacent windows and the outside rails of the second floor windows. Also, the applicants are proposing to install heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems on the roof, which are to the rear of this current addition. So those are the squares, the small squares that you see on this plan. The sign that you see before you will be subject to a future application. It is not currently part of this one at this point, but is added in there for reference and scale. The current ground floor configuration includes large fixed windows, framed in aluminum. I might have pictures of those. Oh, I don't. And a fully glazed aluminum commercial door. The Heritage District Plan encourages the replacement features to model those found throughout the district in order to be compatible with the character of the area. The applicants are proposing to reduce the glazing by adding metal spandrel units just above the existing sills and along the outside of the openings. This will aid in reducing the amount of glazing and to both align the sides of the new windows with the window rails on the second floor and the sills of the adjacent building, Heritage Building. The resulting glassed areas will be a vertical rectangular shape, similar to the shapes of the openings on this building. The existing sills and knee walls will be retained and reused with minor alterations to accommodate the new double door. With respect to the proposed coloring of the spandrels, frames, and doors, the applicants have chosen colors that reflect those that are already on this building, black and blue. The new door hardwares are to be a dark color that complement the facade, and I understand they're called burnished bronze. Typically, staff would not encourage black for window trims as it obscures the glazing pattern of windows and is a striking contrast with the bleached out limestone walls of the building. However, with respect to this building, the shutters, soffits, and I can actually go back to this picture, shutters, soffits, downspouts, eaves, the existing window trims are all currently black, and requiring an alternative color in this particular situation would draw unnecessary attention to this 1980s stucco addition, and in our opinion would therefore negatively impact the heritage attributes and the heritage character of the 1850 stone building. So staff have no concerns with the proposed color choices as presented. However, we would recommend as a condition an opportunity to review those colors specifically when they are, before they are installed. And that has been included as a recommended condition of approval. Finally, the new rooftop heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems are located back from the front of the building. They'll be out of view of the public and therefore meet the policies of the plan. The application was circulated, as mentioned, through our Dash system. It was actually circulated twice. The first rendition, we received comments back that were provided to the applicant, and the applicant made some changes and they were recirculated. So both those comments are included in the agenda package for review. One of the concerns that was raised was with respect to the use of privacy film, which was proposed over a number of the windows. The applicants reconsidered that given the comments that we received and have removed those from the plans. Another concern that came up was regarding the proportions of the windows and their consistency with the ones found throughout the building. And this, again, was reviewed by the applicants, and they have since reduced the amount of glazing with the existing openings in order to be more consistent with those throughout the building. So, Mr. Chair, given our review and the comments we received, it is our opinion that the proposed alterations meet the designation goals and objectives of the HCD plan, and we are recommending approval.
Thank you. So you'll see the format, just to remind you that it goes to council with this committee's support or not. Like, there's two sections in the report. So if we support this council's approval, it'll say that the Heritage Committee supports council's approval. But we're not the decision-making body. The decision-making body is council. That's the same with all Part 5. So at this point, the next step is if you gave input through Dash, were your comments accurately reflected in the report? That is the question. If not, are there any errors or omissions? So that would apply to you, Don. I think you're the only one present that made comments, unless someone else thinks they've been missed.
Yes, I'm satisfied, although the proposed design did evolve in several steps, so I have a bit of reservation that I have all the information about the final design being proposed, but since the applicant or their agent, or if their applicant or the agent is here, perhaps that can be clarified.
So the applicant can interact with us in the next section. So we'll just, I guess there's no one else that would have anything in this section. So we'll go to members of the public. And maybe we'll ask the applicant, give the applicant the opportunity to go first to respond to that question from Don. But essentially, if you have anything to say to the committee, and if you want to just comment on the sort of evolution of the design, and what's before us is we'll go to council, so you can comment on that as well.
Rhonda Horn-McQuay with Colburn and Campbell Architects. As presented on the screen, that is reflective of the up-to-date submission. And it was a bit of a back and forth dialogue as we received comments to go back to the client and work through their needs as well as adjusting for the comments. So it is accurately reflected in the presentation images. And I wanted to note regarding the equipment that is on the roof, there is a larger unit on the roof currently, which is not visible from the street, and the newer units, which are smaller, will also not be visible.
Great, thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak at this point? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the report looks very good. Presentation very good. I'm clear on all of that, but just a very minor correction. Looking at page 31 of the package, first sentence should be the southwest corner of Johnson and Wellington, not the southeast corner as written. The southeast corner would be over on the St. George's side.
Clerk has made note of that error in the summary, and thank you for your comments. Yes, Ms. Finley.
Yes, this is a house that I've known since the 60s, and since I lived 3 doors away. I was, of course, unhappy when the bookstore went up because it replaced a porch. And just looking, could you put the sketch up, please? Yes. I find this a very difficult entrance to read, sort of architecturally. And the lines that go along horizontal and up, what are they made of? Are they aluminum? It just looks very strange to me. I think it might look a lot better if they were simply blended in to the rest of the building, which is a stucco finish. So the double doors I have no problem with, the transom I have no problem with, but I guess this is a method of reducing the glaze area. And why the windows have to be right up to the door? They could perhaps be more centered in their own space. It just looks, for me, very unusual.
Thank you. Staff will have the opportunity to respond once we've received all the comments from members of the public. Is there anyone else? Okay, so it's up to staff. Can respond to any of the comments from members of the public or from the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just with the first point, I believe it's the southeast corner. I think we were right. And the second point from Ms. Finley, I believe they're metal aluminum, but I would have to, yes, I see a nod from the applicant, so with the spandrels, I believe that answers the questions.
So that overhead map is north is straight up, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, north is straight up.
Right, so it's really on the south, but it's a little bit more to east, to southeast, so it's like south-southeast, I guess, but you are correct. About the comment of the window design from the last member of the public, did staff have anything to say there?
Mr. Chair, I don't really have anything to add. I know staff went back and forth with the applicant. They were very good at making some changes that we suggested and working out what their clients' needs are, and we're satisfied with the design, and we're recommending support of it.
Okay, thank you. So now it's up to members of the committee can make final comments for submission, and then when we vote, it's a yes or no question of whether we support the application. Yes, Mac.
I agree with Helen about those side panels. I don't know why that couldn't just be stucco. I find that whole proportion of the front to be very odd. I don't really find the windows to be in proportion to the windows up above. They're sort of rectangular, but they're much squarer than the ones up above. And you know why that window couldn't have been moved over a bit, but mainly I guess I could live with the aluminum panels sort of underneath the window, but at the side I just think it looks very odd. I don't see why they couldn't just stucco it. I'd be curious to know if they'd thought about that option or might consider it.
The clerk is noting that comment about the windows. Any other comments? So this goes to staff and who prepares the final report. Yes, Don.
Yes, I have a comment about the metal trim that's been added. I mean, I guess in an ideal world, it would be better to re-stucco that space to reduce the size, but that does complicate things, what you do with a sill, and re-stuccoing a surface often doesn't match very well with the existing stucco, so it looks as if it's been patched. So I can live with this. Not exactly, I would have appreciated a little more information on the sort of finish of these metal panels, you know, just whether they're plain flat or whether they have edges and something like that. But I understand that the applicants don't want to do a major renovation for an area that doesn't really have much heritage significance. So I'm content, generally content.
Those comments have also been noted by the clerk. So we're almost at the point where we'll be voting whether we support or not. Anyone else want to add any comments? Seeing none, we will vote on the question of whether Heritage Kingston supports council's approval of the heritage permit. Yes, we need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Dawn, seconded by Councillor Schell. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries 6-2. 7-2, 3, 6, 7-2. Thank you. Moving right along, the next application with the exact same procedure is 84 Earl Street, also in Old Sydenham. And I see Mackenzie is here to introduce this piece.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This application does relate to the property at 84 Earl Street. It's located on the south side of Earl between Bagot and Wellington Street. It contains a 2-story, 4-bay red brick house constructed in 1917. It was designated under Part 5 of the Heritage Act as part of the Old Sydenham District. And this application has been submitted to request permission to remove an existing 1-story rear addition and reconstruct a new 1-story addition with a similar footprint and a new at-grade deck. Currently, this rear addition is of wood frame and concrete foundation, and it's clad in a narrow horizontal vinyl siding. It includes a 1/1 window and 2 6/6 windows, as well as a 15-pane wood door, both likely of 1960s construction, as well as a small deck. The proposed new addition will have a larger footprint than the existing addition, with a larger at-grade deck. The addition is proposed to be clad in horizontal wood siding with a green and white paint scheme, as well as black asphalt shingles and 2 flush-mounted skylights. The proposal includes new single-hung wood windows, as well with aluminum cladding to match the 1/1 pattern of the main building, as well as French deck doors, all made by Marvin Windows. The proposal includes the installation of a gas chimney insert into the existing brick chimney at the rear, which will necessitate a small metal vent at the top of the chimney, but this vent will not be visible from the street. The applicant is proposing to leave the deck unpainted to age naturally to be consistent with the character of the wood features at the rear of the properties along Earl Street. So this property, as I mentioned, is designated under Part 5. It's a contributing property in the district. The description notes it's two-story, four-bay construction with its shared front porch, with its plain wood columns, stone bases, and simple 1/1 window openings. This property is located in the North to Bagot sub-area, which is the first area of expansion that has a distinctive development pattern with a range of building types, materials, and ages. This building was likely built in 1917 to replace a frame building, which would have originally occupied the lot. It's a contributing building and reflects Kingston's mid-20th century development. The removal of additions, contributing heritage buildings isn't permitted in the plan. However, this policy it intends to inform the evaluation proposals to remove buildings and structures or attributes on a designated property that contribute to the understanding of cultural value. The heritage value of this building was evaluated as part of the district study, and this rear addition wasn't included as part of the description and hasn't been identified as a heritage attribute. As per aerial imagery, this addition was likely added much later than the main building during the mid-20th century, and its construction materials and methods indicated it has likely very little heritage value. So staff have no objection to its removal. The Sydenham plan also notes that new additions should be complementary and clearly secondary in terms of size and distinguishable from the main building in terms of form and detail. The applicant has proposed an addition where the ridgeline will be lower than the lowest height of the primary brick building facing Earl Street, and it won't be visible from the street. The addition will be painted in a green and white color scheme to match the main building. As well, it will be clad in horizontal wood siding, which meets the policies of the district plan. This is consistent with Parks Canada's standards and guidelines with respect to distinguishing between old and new work. The addition will have solid black plain asphalt shingles, as well as the two flush-mounted skylights, which also meets the policies in the district plan. The new single-hung wood windows by Marvin in the 1/1 pattern will be compatible with the heritage character of the main building and will be consistent with the city's policy on windows. This application also includes the proposal to retrofit the existing chimney at the rear within the addition in order to accommodate a gas fireplace insert. Section 4.3 in the plan notes that chimneys should be retained and that internal liners should be used appropriately to retrofit such chimneys. The applicant has confirmed that the chimney was recently rebuilt and that this new insert will only require that small vent. The reconstruction of the at-grade deck, the district plan policies don't relate specifically to decks, but the policies in relation to porches and verandas have informed our review of this proposal. It will be constructed of wood, which is consistent with the objectives of the plan. The plan also notes that decorative features should be painted. However, the applicants have proposed to leave it to age naturally. And the applicant has provided photos to demonstrate that naturally aging wood features at the rear of properties along Earl is a common element. So staff have suggested that it be painted. However, given that it won't be visible from the public realm, staff are supportive of leaving it to weather naturally. This application was circulated internally to a number of departments who have provided comments, and staff have incorporated those comments as conditions of approval where appropriate. Notably, planning has identified that the applicant should confirm that the proposed addition meets the maximum building depth provisions of the zoning bylaw, as well as this proposal will need a building permit and to meet the requirements under the Health and Safety Act. This application was circulated to Heritage Kingston through our DASH system. Staff only received 2 comments in relation to mainly to paint color, which the applicant has provided. Will be this color green to match an existing shed at the rear, as well as white to match the windows of the main building. One member also asked for further detail on the skylights to confirm that they will be included, as well as the chimney, which isn't noted on the plan, but the applicant has confirmed that that is the case. It will be retained, as well as further clarification on the color of the asphalt shingles, which will meet the district plan policies. So at this time, we're happy to receive further comments to what was received in DASH. Thank you.
So that's right. So we follow the next step in the thing. The questions are not in order at the beginning. You have one opportunity to interact with staff, and that's later on. First, you confirm if you made comments through DASH that they were correct, or if there was any omissions, just like last file. That's the members that made submissions through DASH. Don, yeah, he confirms. And now members of the public and or the applicant are permitted to speak if they so wish. Just make sure the microphone's on.
Yes. I went and looked at this house just up the street from me, and I always get very concerned when I hear in a recommendation that it's not seeable from the public realm, and that means the public street out front. And to me, the other side of that coin is, therefore, it doesn't really matter what you do behind. But this application has really taken into account that it's important what you do behind. And the other buildings that are there, there's a laneway that runs behind there. And if you walk down there, you will realize that this is a really backyard community. They're not big fences chopping it all up. And so it does matter what goes in the interior of this block. And it seems that both the applicant and the staff have paid attention to that. And I'm really, really pleased to see that. Still unhappy about the public realm thing, because I think that's just for people walking by. And I think we should be focusing on the building, the property, and front, back, top, bottom. And not, we've always, with the type of urban planning that has been going on for centuries, paid special attention to the front and had simpler things in the back. It's not make the back fancy like the front. It's not what's really, I don't see that as the aim of it. So I'm very pleased to see, and I know this will fit in with the very nice private realm at the back.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak? Seeing none, now committee members have an opportunity to make comments and have them captured by James to go to staff. I have one on the point about the facades. Just for clarification, could staff confirm how the Old Sydenham plan deals with principal facades vis-a-vis, say, the Berryfield plan? Because I understand they're not the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe the Berryfield district plan is much more specific with respect to public and private facades. The Sydenham plan isn't as specific.
Thank you. And I had another clarification question. This one's a planning question to do with condition F, standards for lot coverage. That's zoning standards, right? This is planning language. I don't know if Mr. Newman wants to answer this, but There's been those 6 new recommendations that came out of the ICBL initiative. Some of them had to do with lot coverage, and I'm wondering if those recommendations have any relevance to this file.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the interim control bylaw work that staff did to address the concerns presented by the public, we're really looking at the massing and the proportions of additions relative to the existing dwelling. As part of any heritage permit application, we look at the conformity of what's being proposed against the zoning. So we're wanting to make sure that, say, an addition off the back is still meeting the required yard setbacks and lot coverage provisions. So we've done that in this case, and we can confirm that the addition as proposed and the decking meets the requirements of the zoning bylaw. As it relates to the interim control bylaw and the discussion that council had with the public around some of the issues that we're being challenged with, there is some work that's flowing out of that that staff are doing to look at the appropriateness of proportions relative to the size of the lot, so we don't end up with incompatibility of built form. So that's sort of outside of this application, but it's something that we're looking at as it relates to this application. What's being proposed meets the zoning.
So the answer would be, if this addition had been much bigger in size and massing, it would have been subject to the new work that staff and may not have fit the compatibility requirements.
At this time, through you, Mr. Chair, at this time we haven't advanced any changes to the zoning. We're still sort of doing the analysis of what changes may be required to address those issues. So until the actual changes are made to the zoning, we have to review what's proposed against the rules of the day. So that's what we're doing in this case. But a year from now, there might be new zoning controls in place that would put limits on the size of additions relative to the size of a lot.
Perfect. Thanks for answering my question. Thank you for the committee's indulgence. Are there any other comments on this file that committee members want to be included? Seeing none, now we're at the vote to support. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Mac, seconded by Catherine, that Heritage Kingston supports council's approval of this application. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we have an application, 268 Main Street in Berryfield. We had a delegation on that spoke to a festival that's happening on this property. Just to point out, this is the Part 5 Heritage Permit application, and Mackenzie, it looks like it will introduce it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this application relates to the property at 268 Main. It's located on the east side of Main Street in the village of Berryfield, south of the junction of Main Street and Highway 15. The property contains a 2-story Gothic Revival church known as St. Mark's Anglican Church, constructed between 1843 and 1844. The property is designated under Part 5 as part of the district. This application, as we talked about earlier today, has been submitted to repair and rebuild the existing dry stone walls that flank the main entrance of the church to match their original position, including some minor modifications to the current appearance that are necessary to address some of the slope of the property. The applicant has provided historic research demonstrating that the dry stone walls were likely an original feature of the church property, with archival material noting them as early as 1853. The report also notes that they've been rebuilt probably twice, at least in the last 30 years, once in 1951 to accommodate the modern road allowance. As per the applicant's report, specific measures will be taken to record the position of existing walls, as well as systematically to sort the coping and wall stones as the work proceeds. The applicant notes that the width of the entranceway will be maintained, And while the walls currently abut the stone gate posts, as you can see in this photo, the stone posts won't be, they're not part of this application, but the walls will be reconstructed so that they don't rely on the stone posts, so that any future maintenance can be undertaken independently. The angled portion of the north end will be rebuilt in its original position, which will both provide a strong termination to the wall and provide a subtle indication of where the wall once ran along the north side of the property. This will also allow for missing sections to be rebuilt in the future if that's desired. On the south end, which is currently in its original position, the application is proposing to shorten the length as this portion is partially collapsed in the ditch. And this will also address some of the slope of the property. As I mentioned, this application is on the St. Mark's property. It's one of the landmark buildings, probably the most significant landmark building in Berryfield, with its views to the tower from Highway 15, as well as with respect to this application, the contextual heritage value also includes the stone walls and pillars and mixed vegetation that frames the ceremonial entrance to the church. The applicant has submitted this application to be a part of the Dry Stone Wall Festival that we heard about already this morning. And the reconstruction will be completed by professionals in dry stone walling in accordance with the approach outlined by the applicant. Section 2 of the HCD plan describes St. Mark's as the most prominent landmark in Berryfield, and its landscape features such as the stone walls as in important contextual attributes that add to the 19th century character of the district. The goals and objectives in Section 3 focus on conserving, protecting, and enhancing the unique character of the village, including its landscape features. And this application to reconstruct the boundary walls relates to the preservation of a character-defining attribute of the church property and the district as a whole. The village of Berryfield is an evolving cultural heritage landscape that now contains new streets and landscape features while retaining much of its 19th century character. Section 4.7 specifically encourages the evolution of historic landscape features, and the applicant has submitted a comprehensive report providing documentation demonstrating that the walls have been rebuilt at several points during their history. And as such, staff are of the opinion that rebuilding these stone walls periodically is part of the district's evolving cultural heritage landscape value. And therefore, this project meets the intent of Section 4.7 of the plan. The report also provides an outline of the detailed recording process based on documentary evidence. The district plan notes that this is fundamental to reviewing any landscape changes in the district. The applicant has provided details to demonstrate an understanding of the historical construction of the walls and their value, on which he has based solutions to address design flaws, property constraints, and solutions to allow for future work. This meets Parks Canada's district standards and guidelines for with respect to restoring built features in their original position, and staff are of the opinion that the proposal to rebuild the angled portion of the wall in the north end in that original position, allowing sections to be reinstated in the future, as well as shorten the south section, meets those guidelines. Further to this, staff encourage the applicant to document the new work in an unobtrusive way, perhaps by including a reconstruction date in order to guide research and treatment for when the walls may need rebuilding in the future. This application was circulated internally to a number of departments whose comments have been incorporated as conditions of approval. It was also circulated to Heritage Kingston through Dash. We received mostly comments of support, mainly comments of support for this application. There was a question regarding the potential to do some grading for the new sections of the wall. However, the applicant has advised that this would not likely be an issue since there's only a few inches of topsoil on the bedrock. So staff have reviewed the submitted materials against the relevant policies and are satisfied it meets the intent of the objectives and best practices in heritage conservation and support the proposal. Thanks.
Thank you. So those members who have submitted comments through Dash have a chance to correct any omissions or errors. Seeing no hands, members of the public have an opportunity to speak. So we've already heard a delegation. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay. Now members of the committee have an opportunity to have final comments to be included. Catherine?
Congratulations. I just think it's great.
Okay. Mr. Vice Chair, I'd like to comment as a member.
I have the chair.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Yes, and I don't know whether staff can alleviate my concerns immediately or not, but I'd want my comment on the record that as excited as I am about the Dry Stonewall Festival, it is my opinion that any mature trees that are on the site are part of the cultural heritage as well. Trees live to be hundreds of years, so although they may not date back to 1840, they are part of the cultural heritage. And I'm wondering, because two of the conditions have to do with tree removal, if that has been the case, or is this just a sort of protection, this is wording that we're putting in just in case they think of removing trees? So I don't know if you have anything to add on that right now, but if not, I'd like it on the record.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the trees, as I understand the trees, the conditions in the recommendation with respect to preserving the trees relate to trees over 15 centimeters in diameter. As I understand, there are a few that need to be removed. Maybe the applicant could speak to which trees and how many, to give you a better idea.
Return the chair.
The applicant may, as chair, I'm willing to let you speak again, but you're not obligated to speak to answer my question if you don't want to. But if you'd like, you could come explain the situation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Craig Sims. I help with the application. The plantings that exist adjacent to the walls are problematic in a couple of ways. For starters, we need about 8 feet either side of the wall as workspace to do the project properly. But the other thing, in terms of long-term maintenance, is that large trees and masonry structures do not happily coexist in close proximity. So there's one large tree on the municipal property which we can work around, and it can be protected, and as directed we can stay away from the area beneath its crown and all that. Some of the other plantings, though, that are on the church side of the wall are in poor condition anyways. And so our intention is ultimately to try to like initially cut the lilacs and the larger plantings back about 8 feet to permit the work, but after that encourage the church to keep about a 6-foot area clear so that they can cut the grass and we can prevent the trees and lilacs from encroaching again on the masonry. So,
thank you for taking the time. Cutting back of lilac bushes and things like that is quite different from removing a large mature tree, so I'm glad that you've said that that would be protected. Thank you. Right, so now the comments have been captured. Is there any other comments? Okay, so now we're at the voting stage. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Jamie, seconded by Councillor Schell, to support Council's approval of this application. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Good luck with the festival. I'm going to put it on my calendar. Okay, we have one more Part 5 application. This is 412 Regent Street, also in Berryfield. Would staff like to introduce this application?
Okay, so this application relates to the property at 412 Regent Street. It's located on the south side of Regent Street between Drummond and Main Streets, in the village of Berryfield as well. It contains a 1.5-story house with a front gable plan, return eaves, rectangular windows, and narrow horizontal cladding. The original house was constructed in 1890. However, a rear addition was likely added in the 1960s or 1970s. This property was designated under Part 5 of the Heritage Act, recently updated through the new district plan. This application has been submitted to request permission to remove the existing one-story rear addition and reconstruct a new one-story addition in its place. The proposed addition is to have a pitched roof with metal siding, standing seam metal roofing and skylights, and is clad in vertical wood siding and feature rectangular sunshades. The proposal also includes the removal of many unsympathetic alterations to an added 1970s section of the main dwelling, which you can see in yellow in this elevation. These additions, or these alterations include the realignment of the eaves and overhang to match the alignment of the main dwelling, the removal of unsympathetic windows and brick and glass block infill, and the replacement of the existing skylights with flush-mounted skylights. All windows are proposed to be single-hung sash windows with traditional glazing pattern, with the exception of a horizontal sliding window at the rear of the east facade, which will be located at a public view. This proposal also includes an upper story rear deck and a ground floor deck that wraps around the west facade, which is aligned with the small side porch. The west facade is proposed to have 5 sash windows and be clad in vertical wood siding. The siding will be inset below that upper deck. The proposal also includes some repair and enhancement of the front facade and street elevation to the original main dwelling, which includes a request to preserve and make masonry repairs to the existing non-original chimney, repaint the existing wood trim on the front facade, and reconstruct the existing front patio to remove the existing chain link fence. This application was brought to Heritage Committee at their April meeting for a pre-application consultation. The original plans included proposals for a very modern-looking addition with large sections of glazing on the west facade, glass guardrails, vertical metal siding, and tall, narrow, vertical, horizontal windows, as well as several new openings in the original portion of the house. In response, the applicants have amended their plans incorporating the comments of the committee, which are now much more closely aligned with the policies, guidelines, and objectives of the HCD plan. So this property is designated under Part 5, and the property has historic value as a typical example of a vernacular frame construction representative of the 19th century construction by the Allen brothers. The building's architectural attributes pertain to its form and construction methods and materials. Section 2 of the HCD plan outlines the cultural heritage value of the district and includes a list of heritage attributes that are essential to defining and conserving its value. The section notes that the village is an evolving cultural heritage landscape defined by its 19th century and 20th century building stock. It now contains new streets and new buildings, which are compatible in character in terms of scale and generally reflect the traditional design and materials used in the district. Many of the early buildings in the district have survived as they were originally constructed. However, many have been altered and repaired to reflect the changing needs of their owners. Since this property's construction, as we have seen, the subject property has had many alterations which have impacted the authenticity of the building. However, it remains generally in keeping with the character of the district. Alterations in new construction can have an adverse effect on a heritage building or adjacent buildings in a district. The district plan provides broad conservation objectives and encourage the maintenance and repair of heritage buildings, as well as the enhancement and protection of the character of the district. The applicant is proposing to protect and enhance the remaining original and historic attributes of the property while removing the later unsympathetic additions that have been made to the property and address the new owner's needs, improving on the building's appearance and compatibility in the district. Section 4.2 notes that alterations should ensure the heritage attributes are maintained and the public facades not adversely affected, and that replacement features on heritage buildings are appropriate. The proposed alterations to that front facade include the repainting, some masonry repairs, and the reconstruction of the existing front patio, all of which meet the intent of the policies in the plan. The painting shall be informed by historic color palettes and won't affect the heritage value of the district. So staff support the choice of paint colors, recognizing their use elsewhere in the district. The applicant has confirmed that the chimney is not original. However, they intend to preserve and repoint the structure as it will benefit the overall aesthetic of the property and will showcase an evolution of the building. The patio is not an original element, and the chain link fence would be considered undesirable landscaping. And the applicant is proposing a new wood porch design that will have dimensions to match those that currently exist, yet the undesirable chain link fence will be replaced with a wood fence, being less than 1 meter in height. So staff have no concerns with the proposals for the front facade, subject to the conditions outlined in this report. The application also includes minor alterations to the rear. The 1.5-story 1970s edition shown in green in the bottom elevation. Currently, the section of the addition aligns with the ridge line of the original house, with a raised section of roof at the eaves to accommodate the upper story picture window on the west. The applicant is proposing to drop the eaves at the rear to better align with the main portion of the house. Section 4.3.1 provides specific policies in relation to ridgeline, which we discussed at the last meeting, for new additions requiring them to be lower than the heritage building. But given that there's no alteration of the ridgeline, staff are of the opinion that this proposal doesn't contravene that policy. The existing metal roofing will be utilized on the revised section of the eaves, which the applicants have indicated will match as closely as possible. Best practices in heritage conservation recommend differentiating between old and new work, and yet to ensure that new additions are compatible with the heritage resources. In order to distinguish between the original portion of the house and the modified addition, the applicant has proposed to delineate the original house with a narrow piece of flashing when the eaves are revised, and staff support this alteration as it meets the policies in the district plan. Further changes to the rear roof include the replacement of the 2 existing skylights. The existing skylight on the west facade is visible from the street. However, the applicant is proposing to replace it with one that's lower in profile, so it will be less visible. The district plan policy notes that skylights should be or shall be located away from public view, but given that the proposal will improve the existing skylights and are at the rear of the property, staff are of the opinion this meets the intent of those policies. Removal of heritage buildings or portions of buildings is not encouraged in the district. While this building has been identified as a heritage building, the attributes described in the inventory don't relate to the rear portion of the house. Through a review of aerial imagery, staff have confirmed the existing 1-story addition was likely added in the mid-20th century and accordingly has very little heritage value. So staff are of the opinion that the proposed removal of that 1-story addition will not detract from the character of the property or the district. The roof form and window proportions can have a substantial impact on the character of the district if improperly designed. The rear addition will have a pitched roof with standing seam roofing. The pitch of the new roof and choice of materials will match that of the main dwelling. And the design of the roof is in keeping with the policies in the plan. With respect to windows, the proposed addition includes 2 new skylights, which will be located out of public view, which is also consistent with the plan. Windows in Berryfield are typically rectangular and vertical in their orientation. The proposed windows are largely consistent with those found in the district, except for the horizontal sliding window, which is proposed on the east facade. This window won't be easily seen from the public realm, as the window will be located within the inset portion of the building and will be screened by the abutting dwelling. The applicant has provided that installing the horizontal window it's to address some of the interior concerns. The kitchen is proposed in this location, so the horizontal window will go between the sink and the above cabinets, so this is necessary for some light in that area. Staff are supportive of the orientation and shape of the windows as proposed, and have included a condition in the permit to ensure materials are appropriate. The form of the existing, the exterior cladding and choice of material also should be consistent with that which is found in the district, and to ensure compatibility. The applicant has proposed to clad the rear addition in a range of gray to off-white vertical wood siding and install rectangular wood sunshades. The plan notes that wood siding is a traditional material in the district, and board and batten is appropriate as a secondary material on main buildings. The applicant has indicated the vertical siding was chosen to allude to the existing barn at the rear of the property. The plan also notes that new additions should be designed in a manner that distinguishes between old and new and avoids replicating the design of the heritage structure. And this section also encourages new additions to be contemporary interpretations of the existing heritage building. Staff are of the opinion that proposed cladding material type and color choice will complement the 19th century village character and rural atmosphere of the district, and will help subtly distinguish between the original building's horizontal cladding and the new construction. The rear facade features a deck on the ground floor that extends around the west side of the house and a small upper story balcony. With a glass guardrail to the south. The plan notes that wood is recommended as a material for porch construction, but only in relation to public facades. So glass is not a traditional material in the district, but staff are supportive of its use in this case, as it's situated away from the public facade and will not be visible from the street. The applicant has also proposed to extend the original siding, the horizontal siding of the guardrail to the west, which will make the glass even less visible. These proposals meet the Parks Canada standards and guidelines for the removal of non-character defining features, and the applicant has demonstrated that there have been many unsympathetic additions which they propose to remove. The applicant has proposed replacement features that meet the policies of the district plan and objectives of the district plan, and these do not impact the heritage attributes of the building. This application, as I mentioned, was brought to the committee for pre-application consultation in April. Heritage Kingston provided comments and concerns, which I have incorporated into this report. The applicant has then made revisions based on these comments, which were modified in their application submission, and this application was circulated to the committee through DASH. The majority of the comments that were received following the pre-application noted the design is much more consistent with the plan policies and acknowledged the revisions that the applicant has made. One member did note the extension of the horizontal siding on the upper deck could be changed to another material to distinguish between the various phases of development. And staff have forwarded this to the applicant. It was on the east facade. It was suggested that the new ground floor window should match the upper window in width and have the same trim. This was suggested to the applicant, who advised that the window is nearly identical in dimension, save for the trim. And they have indicated they would prefer to distinguish this new window by omitting the trim. Further comments were received with respect to replacing the small window with a larger window on the west facade at the front of the house. And one member noted that the horizontal window on the east facade doesn't meet the guidelines in proportion, but acknowledged that it may be necessary for light in that kitchen area. This member also noticed the applicant could replace the small window on the west side with a larger window to match, given that it's not likely original and detracts from the character of the building, and staff are of the opinion that the policies in the plan explicitly don't allow for the creation of new window openings without documentary evidence. The applicant has agreed to provide evidence before the building permit stage or not to include it as part of this proposal. An additional concern was raised regarding the lack of roof overhang at the one-story rear addition, which could help avoid material and foundation damage due to rainwater runoff at the eaves, and the applicant has indicated that drainage will be engineered to ensure that proper drainage is achieved, and they have provided a section drawing to demonstrate this in the final exhibit of your report. Finally, floor plans were requested as part of this application in order to understand how interior changes related to the exterior. Staff have requested to review all plans at the building permit stage. However, they weren't required as part of this application since there's no interior designation. So upon review of these plans in relation to the relevant policies and legislation, staff are supportive of this application and happy to hear further comments at this point.
Thank you. So there were 3 members who made comments through DASH. There was also the pre-consultation that we had. But on the DASH comments that are in the package, thank you very much for those detailed comments, the 3 of you that made them. The 2 of you that are here today, you have the opportunity to correct what it says in the report, if you like, but it seems to me that the DASH system, that's one of its strengths, that it goes verbatim into the report. Anyway, we'll have an opportunity after the members of the public to make comments, but right now the applicant can speak or members of the public can speak. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to compliment the excellent plans, very thorough, very outstanding drawings for what's a very interesting and complex project, and also very high-quality presentation today. I'm going to go along with Mr. Hill's comment on his submission, with respect to the floor plans, because for such a, I guess, intricate design change, it'd be good to know more about this to establish the extent of the increased massing of the project. It looks to be quite a substantial addition once they actually remove all of the other additions that they don't like, right? So is that a 20% increase in massing or 40% or whatever? It's hard to tell from the drawings. So it might be good to know that. I'm not sure if this now, if it goes through here, if it would go to the planning committee as well. Because typically at the planning committee, they look at that kind of thing. So I understand probably they want to get going on it. Maybe they're just trusting that the committee will sort of give them, I guess, benefit of the doubt on the floor plans. So thank you.
Any other members of the public? Okay, so staff has the opportunity to respond to comments or questions from members of the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned in the presentation, the interior floor plans weren't required as part of this application, as there's nothing on the inside that's designated. We have requested to see the final plans at the building permit stage. With respect to whether this application goes to Planning Committee, this is the only Planning Act, Ontario Heritage Act application that is required, so it will not go to Planning Committee. But with respect to how much massing is being added, really the section that is highlighted in blue in this drawing is really the only new area that is being added. So hopefully that answers the members of the public question.
So I take that answer to mean that the application does not trigger a planning application because of its size. It doesn't require a zoning bylaw amendment.
That's correct.
So this is an opportunity for members of the committee to submit final comments that would go in the report to council. Would go to staff and then report to council. Yes, Don?
Well, first of all, I think the proposal will be a tremendous improvement to the property, and I'm very pleased that they have responded to many of the suggestions that have come before. I guess I just want to mention a couple of areas that I'm still not quite comfortable with. Understanding that it's entirely up to the applicants to follow them up if they wish. One is the sort of horizontal windows in the kitchen. The intention there is to get light into the kitchen, but every kitchen has the same issue of getting light into the interior. And the problem with putting horizontal windows, apart from the fact that they're not really quite appropriate in the Berryfield plan, is that kind of light is not very effective in lighting the room because it's low light. You really want light from a height to illuminate the room. And if you think about the fact that there'll be possibly toasters and microwave ovens and things like that on the counter, I think you may find that you're not getting very good light into the kitchen from that arrangement. The standard approach is a tall window over the sink, and I think that's really to be recommended in general, but again, this is just a suggestion. My other concern is about on the west side, the horizontal siding extending over the side of the rear deck. I wasn't quite sure how that picture there, that picture shows some kind of vertical division between the end of the wall of the house and the sort of deck railing material, which isn't present in some other views. But my point was that there really should be some division between the main house. I mean, something that delineates the main house from the deck. In any case, it's really not practical to just say, I think, that the decking can just continue along the side because its function is very different. On the one side, it's got to be insulated. On the deck side, you're not going to insulate it. You've got to support it with posts and things like that. So there is a difference in function, and I think both Sherman Hill and I pointed that out, and that difference in function should show in the actual design. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members wish to offer some final comment? Councillor Schell.
Thank you. This was an incredibly complex application. That was my first thought about this whole thing. Very complex, with many, many questions. And I'd just like to thank Mackenzie for that incredibly professional presentation, because the Berryfield Conservation Plan is very detailed, very specific, and I sort of sitting here amazed as you justified every comment, every change against the Berryfield plan. I think that was extremely well done. It is an old house with really a modern looking addition that blends in with the old house. And in terms of architecture, there will never be people in agreement. But in terms of the Berryfield Conservation Plan and this application, I'm in awe, actually. Thank you very much. So I'm happy to support this.
Mr. Vice Chair, I'd like to add a comment.
I'll take the chair.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Schell. Compared with the complexity of the undertaking and all the different aspects and the complexities of the Berryfield plan as well, not only is the work by Mackenzie commendable, as you said, and I fully agree, well done, the applicants have shown to be legitimately intent on adding great value to the neighborhood with this project. And I think that's the gauge that I'm using. And I'm confident that this is an improvement, and architectural disagreements notwithstanding on a couple of the things that have been mentioned, I think this is I think everyone in Berryfield, I'm hoping that they will agree with us that this is a great improvement. I plan to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. I return the chair.
Any other final comments to go on the record? Okay, so now we vote whether we support or don't support Council's approval of the application. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Megan, seconded by, I think I saw Catherine. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Good luck with this project. Okay, well, it is almost noon, but there's light at the end of the tunnel because we're getting near the end of the agenda. The next item is the property grant applications. It is our role here as the Heritage Committee to approve or deny the grants. It is not relevant to discuss the merits of the proposal because those permits have already been granted. It is just whether or not we apply the property grant. There is a limited amount of property grant money, and we do run out every year, so that the question is whether these applications which have been approved have merit for a grant. That's the only question that it's a yes or no question. So go ahead, Mr. O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have before us today 3 applications for Heritage Property Grants, and as mentioned, the alteration permits themselves have already been approved by the authority granted to the Director of Planning. These three properties are designated under Part 5 and or Part 4 of the Heritage Act. And I will go through them quickly here for you. In your package, you will have a copy of the property evaluations and the designation bylaws that go with these properties, as well as the quotes for the projects and photographs of the property. So the first one before us is 112 William Street. This is on the south side of William Street, just west of the intersection with Bagot. The property was designated in 1984 individually, and then it's part of the Sydenham District. The applicants wish to replace the roofing. It'll be a like-for-like asphalt shingle replacement. They've submitted a quote which was just shy of $5,000 and are asking for the maximum granting of $2,000 for this project. The second application is for a 77 to 79 Gore Street. This is an existing double house. This is one single property, although it has two addresses. It's on the north side of Gore Street in the Sydenham District Plan, and is designated as part of that plan. The applicants have actually been approved for a number of alterations to this building under staff's authority, but before you today is a significant masonry project that they want to do. It's various portions around this building. The total quote was in excess of $40,000, so they are too asking for the maximum $2,000 grant for their masonry work. And finally, 66 Earl Street on the south side of Earl Street near the intersection with Wellington. And this property was designated in 1984 under Part 4 and is also within the Sydenham District. The applicant in this case is asking for grant funding to offset the cost of replacing and recreating missing storm windows on this building. There are a few aluminum storms that are on this building that they would want to remove and recreate custom-made wooden ones in place of those and the missing ones as well. That's a total of 10 windows, actually. The applicant has submitted a quote just shy of $4,000, and they are eligible for 50% of that cost, which is just over $1,600. So staff have reviewed these applications. Each of the property meets the eligibility requirement for a property to be grantable. The works themselves need to be those that conserve and enhance the existing heritage attributes of the property. We've assessed these works, and it is our opinion that each of the works proposed also meet the eligibility criteria. Financial services have been consulted, and these properties have their taxes and outstanding property fees are up to date and are eligible from that perspective. And approval of this will, we still have money left in the grant program. This will essentially be down to just under half of what, actually be less than half, be to about 2/3 of the grant funds will be allocated after today, if approved. And Mr. Chair, we recommend approval of all three of these applications.
Thank you, Ryan. And as far as the total pool goes, in my report later in the agenda, it says 36,000 from 2016. Is that the same number for 2017?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Right.
It's 36,000.
So we're down to roughly 12,000 out of 36,000 if we approve these, I guess is what you said.
Down to about 14,000, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. That's the situation. It's a yes or no question. We go to questions, if there's any, like the one I just asked, if you have any questions of staff. Seeing none. Like any business item, members of the public have an opportunity to comment. Seeing none. Well, we'll proceed to debate. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Peter, seconded by Jamie. So the recommendation is that we give the grants. That's what staff is saying. Is there any debate? Seeing none, we'll call the vote on the recommendation of all three grants at once. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. The next item is the 2016 Heritage Kingston report card. Little background. So although this committee actually started before May 31st, 2016, we didn't do a report at that time like it says in the committee bylaw. The committee bylaw asks for an annual Heritage Report Card on or before the 31st of May of each year. We didn't do it last year simply because we'd only met once at that point with the new committee, so there wasn't really much to report. So this is the first annual report. It's got my name on it. I worked with staff, primarily James. Thank you, James, for helping with the report. Basically, like any agenda item, you have the opportunity to speak, ask questions. It will go to council and it will be a permanent record.
I'll just provide a little bit more background very quickly. All of the advisory committees that report through to council produce an annual report in May or June. In the past, the former Heritage Committee did not do this, but when the new committee was created, it became part of their mandate that they report every year in May.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just, because we're on the subject and it won't take long, if you see it's 3 pages, 2.5 pages. It contains statistics, which I asked for, about the various aspects of the work that we do. I think it's evident when you read the report that this is a very active committee that deals with a lot of work. And so that's summarized objectively with listing the number of various types of applications, the number of briefings, the number of various things that happen. And then I added some language at the end regarding the ongoing sort of evolution of the committee. So the last 4 paragraphs was along those lines. It's the first year of the committee, so there was a lot of briefings, and those had an orientation type function. But I've always said that, especially on cultural heritage matters with interaction with the Cultural Services Department, that as opposed to the built heritage applications that we look at on a monthly basis, there have been no actionable items on the cultural heritage side, but today we had a discussion on policy. So it is an evolution, and so there's a language, there's a paragraph to that effect there. Yeah, the second last paragraph is along those lines, and I'm hopeful that we will continue to evolve in that sense. To remind the committee that this new committee, as opposed to former iterations of heritage committees in this city, is meant to be a higher level of discussion because it includes a broader mandate of all the cultural heritage in the city, of which built heritage is one of those aspects. Built heritage is a type of cultural heritage. So just to remind you that this is not going to happen in a day. It's this evolution. And I'd just like to say as chair that it hasn't been without our struggles and our growing pains, but I feel like we're at least going in the right direction, and I am proud to chair this committee, and I am happy with all the members. Like it says in the report, though, is if you have anything to say about an application and you have an opportunity to do so in Dash, please take that opportunity. It is effective. It does, as you can see, alter the application outcome. So that aspect has been working if the uptake is there. And I also encourage you to contact staff during the month on an item that you know is ongoing, such as the lighting policy or anything else. It isn't just when we meet in committee that you can give input. You can contact staff at any time. That's what we councillors do, and you're permitted to do the same. So that said, all we need to do procedurally is receive the report. Right. So the recommendation is that the 2016 Heritage Kingston Report Card be approved as a summary of the work accomplished by the committee. So it needs to be moved and seconded to get it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Don. Okay, so does anyone have any comment on the report card? There's still time to add language or change language. Go ahead, Don.
I think it's an excellent report, but I think there's one omission that perhaps could be put in, and that's where it summarizes the work that we've done it doesn't mention that the committee provided recommendations relating to designations of so many properties and listings of so many properties. And that's an important part of our function. I think that should be included.
So if you look on page 178, the first bullet, there's a line that says the committee provided recommendations related to 12 reports associated with statutory aspects of the Ontario Heritage Act. And just to keep the list fairly simplistic, it was my intention that that sort of covered off your suggestion, but if there's a desire to elaborate a little bit further, that could be the case. When I went through the listings and Part 4 designations, and I think there are a few demolition permits, there's several variables, so it does become a little bit fragmented at some point in terms of the detail, but open to suggestions.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but still I think it'd be nice to highlight, designations and listings in some sense a little more clearly.
Yeah, so is it possible maybe to say just comma after that sentence, including several designations and demolition permits, or just a sort of a qualitative listing of the types of things that fall under the statutory? Because if you're not on the committee, you might not know what the statutory aspects of the Heritage Act are. So just give a couple of examples, basically. Okay, I'm perfectly okay. That's a good point with that addition. Yes, Jamie?
Now, in terms of this report, is it function purely for metrics, like reporting metrics to the council, like statistics, or is there a place to assess the processes of how this works and potential risks or increasing risks? I just bring that up, being this is my very first time involved in this process, and being one of the younger committee members, I would say, whose life is a bit more precarious in terms of work and time and whatnot. I think the council does, or this committee does a lot of work, and there's increased work, particularly with the advent of Dash. That takes a lot of time, and it tends to just explode onto your email. And when I don't respond, it's literally because I have other things I need to accomplish. So I think that needs to be addressed, that needs to be added to what this committee does, because I don't see it in the description, which I know is fairly new. And I also think in terms of the way the work rolls, is that there's a risk in terms of who's going to be able to participate in terms of time and energy and, let's say money, because time is money nowadays. And I'm just wondering if that's a different report, like is there a point where we assess process and policy, or is this not the place to do it? Or is it?
First of all, to respond to a couple of your questions, the Dash system started in 2017, so that'll be next year's report, and there will be language along that and an evaluation of that. To sort of put in the context of where I'm in my mind, in the nursing field, there is an evaluation phase in the nursing process, and reflective practice is also part of your accountability. So that's sort of how I look at it, and that's why I insisted on the statistics, because I like the data to be objective. So it does say the average meeting was over 3.5 hours in length, and he does keep track of the exact time of each meeting, right? With the starting and the adjourning. And I was satisfied if you read this between the lines, you do understand the heavy workload, that not only meeting length, but also with the addition of Dash, that'll be another piece next year that is added. The workload, it cannot be denied, and I was hoping you could read between the lines on that. 19 briefings, it says right in the report, right? That's a significant amount of the committee's time, right? So it didn't get into to solutions or proposed changes at this stage. It's only the first year, but I don't rule out that possibility in the future, for sure. And those discussions are ongoing all the time with staff, how to improve the efficiency of the committee and with the vice chair. So, point taken. I think what you're kind of saying is that for future applicants of this committee, they need to know what they're getting into, right?
I think just to make sure, we're improving the process, right, all the time, right? It's meant to be useful, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote on the report? So, yeah, we'll go to members of the public before we go any further, but Dawn's comment it will result in a change to that bullet. Yes, please come forward.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I got 3 points I want to make. I'll congratulate and thank the committee and staff and people who made presentations on the exceptional work quality and diligence. And I have 2 points of possible improvement or expansion. I'd like to see some data on the percentage of designated buildings compared to those identified which could potentially be designated. In other words, where are we sort of on the roadmap, like sort of made like a signpost? I've heard that there's something like 1,800 potential buildings in the city of Kingston that could be designated, and we've done 800 or 1,000 or whatever. So I don't know how accurate those numbers are. I've heard them from various people. So I'm just wondering if we could be including that kind of information. I think maybe the people in the public would like to know that, because I come here regularly, I see the effort that's put in. Maybe others don't necessarily understand that, right? So just as a way of maybe making the public aware of the enormous contributions that this committee makes. And then my other point is sort of related to that. If you're walking around, say in Old Sydenham District area, if you're observant, you're seeing sometimes plaques near the front doors of buildings that are designated. So you go up and take a look. Okay, this is built in 1842, whatever. That's very interesting. But not all buildings that are designated have those crests on them. I understand that they are given to the owners at various times. So my point is, since this is taking resources at the civic level and it's paid for by tax dollars, could those buildings that are designated actually be required to be identified as such for the tourism standpoint and just for heritage interest? Because I find myself wondering, okay, well, this building's designated. That one doesn't have a display, but maybe it's designated. Maybe it's a sort of a tricky point, right? So I know maybe others would prefer to keep those shields. Maybe they have them inside or whatever. But I'm just wondering if, for the public information and the work that's being paid for through this effort and tax dollars and the volunteer time of members of the committee, we could actually get around to a complete sort of blanket mapping of those that are actually designated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Just to remind members of the public that speak that questions or suggestions not related to the measurement of the work done in 2016 will not be answered because it's not the subject of this business item. Go ahead.
Yes, I don't think site visits are mentioned. And they take committee time, and I think there should be a statistic in there about the number of site visits and the number of committee members and staff who attended. Do you have that? Also, when I read this, I see it as a report, but not a report card, because I don't think there is really, it isn't an evaluation. There's no substantive evaluation that I see. So I think that what I'm expecting to see in the future is the review of the process and how it's evolved, which was promised after the transition team submitted its report. So I'm waiting for that to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very quickly, because I know we're coming to lunchtime, everybody's hungry, but two things I need to raise. I won't belabor the whole Part 5 versus Part 4. You've heard me too much on that already, but I understand how the process is working. I still think that Kingston is being contrary to the majority of municipalities across the province, and I think it's problematic. But the point that I really wanted to raise was as president of Frontenac Heritage Foundation, I have to say we have a number of members who are in the business. So Craig Sims, you know, Sherman Hill, et cetera, we have a number of people. For them to come sit from 9:30 in the morning until they hear their applications at 11 o'clock is a long time. And I see the number of briefings, a preponderance of briefings are cultural briefings. These staff are in the building, and they could easily pop up at 10:30 or 11 and do their briefings. It would be so good if you could flip the committee meetings so that you have the built heritage component at the beginning so that these people do not need to sit. It's a you know, as a build, we are a building owner in the downtown, just so you know, 62, 64, 66 Brock. We have to bring people in all the time to get estimates. It's very time consuming. So for them, time is money, and they're not members of the BIA, otherwise the BIA would probably be here saying this kind of thing. But I'm saying it to you on their behalf, that it's really problematic to have the committee meetings set up this way. I understand totally why you want to have the cultural piece. It's fascinating. This is the first time that there's actually been a recommendation relating to a cultural briefing, which is great. And it's a really important one, the lighting for this whole area. But in order to promote built heritage protection here, we need to make this process more efficient. So thank you.
The chair just asked me to confirm that Ms. Finley's suggestion regarding the site visits will be included in the report, and I'll work with the folks in planning to dig up the data. And in response to Mr. Dixon's comments regarding the number of designations, I'll just reiterate that the purpose of this report primarily is just to provide council with an update for this committee, as well as several other committees, on the work that has been undertaken and staff involvement and committee involvement in their duties and related to the mandate. And it doesn't really necessarily outline additional items to be considered down the path. Those discussions are handled through different processes. So we'll take those comments, and I'm sure Mr. Newman is aware that there's a desire for properties to both be listed on the registry, and when appropriate, there's a desire for listed properties to receive designation. And I believe in the second last paragraph, the chair made comments supporting staff in their efforts to increase the number of designated properties across the city. And I guess in response to Ms. Bailey's comment, I wish to reiterate that the agenda for Heritage Kingston, as well as the other committees, the format is outlined in the committee bylaw, but specifically when Heritage Kingston was formed, the order of business was specifically derived in the way that is outlined in the agenda, and that was approved by council. And as I'm sure you're aware, the numerous other sort of headers and boilerplates were desired by council to be included in the agenda in its current format.
Essentially, the corollary to that last thing to do with the agenda structure is that this committee has no real ability to change the agenda structure. Council has told us what the agenda structure is. Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I first joined the Heritage Committee, it met no, the first time I went to it, it met at 12 and people had lunch. And they often lasted till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And the people who were going to speak got a general idea of when they'd be asked, when they would appear. So it might say 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. You sort of were estimated when you would be arriving. And they were very long meetings. And we didn't have a culture plan then. We didn't have a heritage plan or a culture plan. We just had built heritage. So the change has happened. Our whole look at culture and heritage is evolving. We talked about the cultural heritage policy, and I will be looking these up for Vaughan, Oakville, Oshawa, Hamilton. We're also, in terms of Kingstown visioning, going to be doing a cultural landscape study, which is going to be brand new for the city of Kingston. So this isn't going away, and it's only going to get bigger, and a lot of it is because of citizen push. Kingstown visioning, it's the citizens who said, we want a cultural landscape study done of Kingstown, because we don't want buildings looked at in isolation. We want the story of the area to be part of it. So as things stand, this is the committee. We're it. I know maybe as things keep evolving and getting bigger and culture and heritage get bigger, there'll be a split again. You'll wind up with councillors sitting on their hands as we have right now. So we're evolving. Everything is evolving. And it can't go backward because the citizens of Kingston wouldn't allow it. I mean, this culture and heritage, cultural landscape, cultural heritage are just growing. They're not going to go away. So we're kind of in a process, and there's always going to be debate, obviously, but we won't go back. Thanks a lot.
Well, it's turning into quite the debate. Peter, you're next.
I didn't think I was going to say anything, but I can't resist. We've been at this now for a year. We didn't, as you say, we didn't suggest the order of the agenda. And for the first number of months when we had this agenda, we were learning sort of what it's going to take. But I think that, that Ms. Bailey's suggestion that we are doing a disservice to the people who are very, very important to our deliberations needs to be taken seriously. And in relation to Councillor Schell's comment, I don't see why it shouldn't be possible, after having had a year's experience with this agenda, the order of it, which we can't replace whether we want to or not, I don't see why it should be impossible to give some kind of advice to those people who are coming in front of us as to when it is that the business that they are going to be involved in might be ahead of before us. I think the experience of the previous year should allow us to be able to offer some advice which would not be robbing them of their time. It is unbecoming, I think, and this is an editorial remark which I may regret making, but I'm going to make it. I think it's unbecoming for any council or any committee of the city to for it to be so clear that the people whose time is being prejudiced against is the public that is appearing before us, and those people whose time is being most carefully husbanded are city employees. And that is the way this is structured. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying that if, as a result of this, we are disadvantaging the public who are to appear before us, then I think it's sending the wrong message.
Yeah, before anyone starts discussing the agenda suggestion, that's not even in this report. So I could rule it out of order at any time. However, I'm going to give everyone one shot at this, and this isn't the time and the place to discuss the agenda structure, nor whether we should be suggesting exact times to applicants, because we can do that at any time. That's not in the report. Yes?
I don't really agree with that, because I know last year this thing started, they said at the end of the year we'll reassess. This isn't a reassessment, this just report is what we're doing. Maybe there should be another process, but I totally agree with Shirley about both switching the times. I've said it before, and I'm still very unhappy with the Part 5 and Part 4 designation of the process the city's taken. So I think that it isn't out of place for us to make those statements. I mean, this really wasn't a report card. It was just report is what we do. It wasn't an evaluation of what we did or evaluation of how we feel about what we did or what we think we should be doing. Nobody was asked about that at all. At least I wasn't, anyways.
That's correct. And the only thing I can think of is that we may need a business item at one point to discuss the status of the committee. Then it would be in order. This report card is a summary of last year, of 2016, right? If it leads to highlighting the need for an evaluation of, or an actual review of our processes, efficiency and so on, by the members of the committee, then that needs to be put on the agenda. So that's how that happens. And I'm perfectly willing to have that. So maybe this can be like a beginning for people to think about that, because at the end of the day, the committee can discuss things, but there's some things we can change and some things that we can't, right? So all suggestions are welcome. I mean, we're all in the same boat, right? Any other comments about the report card from 2016? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. So the recommendation that the report card be approved as a summary of the work accomplished by the committee. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And we managed to maintain minimum quorum right to the end. There is a working group report from the Heritage Properties Working Group. There's two? Yeah. So there's two working group reports, one of which is in the package, one of which was separately distributed. They need to be received. Need a motion. Can we do, Mr. Leary, yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just quickly, I wanted to just point out something that might be subtle in these minutes for the Heritage Properties Working Group. Not only did this group meet twice this month, but you might not have caught it that the May 16th meeting started at 9 a.m. and with only a short lunch break, did not adjourn until 4 p.m. So I just wanted to make a public gratitude and thank you to the working group members for the effort they put into evaluating the North Kingstown Heritage Properties, because it was a long day, but it was really effective, and we got through every one of them. So I thought it was worth mentioning.
So in the briefing notes, it says 1 to 3 p.m. That's the second one? Oh, that's May 9th. Yes, sorry. Sorry, I stand corrected. Yes, so the second one, it does say 9 to 4 p.m. Thanks for highlighting that. Yes, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. And on that note, will you be giving us a little list of what were number one properties? How many wound up as possibly ready to be designated, or that might need to be designated? That was a lot of properties, you're right.
It was a lot of properties, Mr. Chair. I believe we evaluated over 300 in the North Kingstown area. Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but I believe about a third of them were recommended, a little over a third of them were recommended for further evaluation. And I think the next step is to pass that on to a consulting firm to do an evaluation of those. There were also, on the total opposite that, there were about, I'm going to say around 30 or 40 that were recommended to not do any further evaluation, and then a separate group in the middle that were sort of had some questions, had some potential, but weren't a top priority, and we're going to just set them aside, keep them on the master list, and look at them as we can in our work plan. So yes, it was a good effort and very successful.
Mr. Newman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add that the part of the purpose behind doing this now, and part of the gratitude extended to the working group for helping support this as a priority, was so that we can scope the next phase of the North Kingstown project. So we were trying to get a grasp of how many properties would a consultant have to look at as part of the initial evaluation of cultural heritage significance. So again, we are very appreciative of the time that the committee spent, or the working group spent, helping us to sort of refine that list. And now we can give to the consultant community a bit of a framework for providing us with the scope of work for the next stage in that project.
Thank you. Do we receive them in one motion? Yeah, so we need one motion, moved and seconded, to receive the briefing notes, for all of the briefing notes. Moved by Don, seconded by Councillor Schell. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. The next item is the update regarding emergency approvals. There's one item there, it's on the record. And then there's no motions or notices of motion. There's no other business. There is an item, there's an item of correspondence. The item of correspondence in the addendum from Mr. Weavers. That now would be the time to discuss further anything that's in here. Keeping in mind, Mr. Wigginton said that some of these concerns are not new. And this can be, this is an ongoing discussion, and if members have input on Mr. Weaver's points, you can contact staff. Would anyone like to say anything at this point? Okay, so the next item is our next meeting, which is July 5th, the day after Canada Day. If it was the day after Saint Jean-Baptiste Day in Quebec, it probably would be a bad idea to have a 9:30 meeting. Oh, that's sorry. Look at that. That's a horrible mistake. It's just a regular day then. Ignore what I said. It's getting late. Okay, so a motion to adjourn. By Councillor Schell, seconded by Mack. All those in favor? Adjourned. Thank you very much.